Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro addressed thousands on Friday ahead of next Sunday's consultative referendum on the sovereignty over the Guayana Esequiba. In Palestine, more than 100 people were killed in an Israeli attack on a building in the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza Strip. The third day of the Dubai COP28 climate summit took place in the United Arab Emirates. Delegation participated in a working meeting focused on how to reduce CO2 emissions. Hello, welcome from the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the @teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. President Nicolas Maduro addressed thousands of Venezuelans on Friday in Caracas ahead of next Sunday's consultative referendum on the sovereignty of the Guayana Esequiba. The event was part of the Closing Venezuela Toda campaign, which has rallied millions of Venezuelans across the country in defense of the historical nation's rights over the disputed territory. During his speech, President Maduro gave a comprehensive account of the history of the dispute and reiterated the inalienable rights of the country over that territory and called all Venezuelans to vote on Sunday for the dignity and sovereignty of the Bolivarian nation.
The Esequibo is ours. We are going to defend the Esequibo because the Esequibo is ours. So it is a national cause. From several generations, we have seen for over years the fight, the struggle of our grandparents, of our great-grandparents since the 19th century, when the British Empire leveraged from Venezuela's weaknesses.
President Maduro also referred to the decision of the International Court of Justice about Venezuela's dispute with Guyana and the media manipulation against Venezuela.
Sides against Venezuela, and so they manipulated the truth, they bent the truth, but they lost. And I'm going to say that there's a lot of money behind all that. They use the international media. That's why on Sunday, all Venezuelans, apart from our differences, all Venezuelans must go out to the streets in a single voice with a single flag, with our flag, blue, red, and yellow, on the Sunday to vote.
The justice systems in Peru blocks again on Friday a pardon for dictator Alberto Fujimori. The judge who was to decide on Fujimori's release sent the controversy back to the Constitutional Court, which considered as valid a pardon that had already been previously overturned. Alberto Fujimori is serving a 25-year sentence for being the mastermind behind 25 murders and serious injuries allegedly committed during his administration by a clandestine military squad. On the other hand, the 4th National Preparatory Investigation Court issued an order to prosecute Keiko Fujimori while formally ordering her to go to trial for the alleged crime of money laundering and criminal organization as part of the cocktail case investigation. The prosecution has asked for 30 years in prison for the former presidential candidate. In Colombia, the 8th International Conference of the Via Campesina to face the food crisis and to ensure a future for humanity began. The conference, held in Bogotá, will host more than 500 agrarian delegations from around the world and will address a variety of crucial issues for the global farmers' movement. The meeting will also focus on the debate and review of fundamental political documents that support the actions of the Via Campesina and highlights the importance of a collective and unified action to address the challenges. In this sense, they will exhibit agroecological experiences and practices of the organizations of the farmers' movement and hand in hand with the agroecological institutes and schools.
I believe that this 8th International Conference is so important. There we are going to propose a route in order to continue strengthening the peasant movement in Latin America and the world, to contract the whole issue of the model of dispossession against the model of a big capital, the model of a big development, which has historically generated violence in the territories. I believe that today we need a great movement and a great unity to continue strengthening the peasant movement for the comprehensive and popular agrarian reform.
This conference is a very important event for our international movement. It is the moment in which we meet all regions and continents to make political decisions about the future we want to do in the coming years as a global peasant movement. And we want to defend our priorities, and it is also a very important moment of solidarity to support each other. And so, yes, to give solidarity to all our members in many countries of the world.
The President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, announced a 20% salary increase that will take effect as of January 1st, 2024. During the press conference, the head of state assured that the increase was developed after an agreement between the labor sector and the business sector of the country. López Obrador assured that this measure means the fulfillment of one of his commitments, since when he assumed the presidency, he promised that the minimum wage would be doubled.
If we take into account that in the free zone of the northern border, the salary goes from 88 pesos in 2018 to 375 pesos a day as of January 1st, that is from 2,687 pesos a month to 11,403 pesos a month. This has not happened for at least 50 years, so that is why I say it is historic. What a better way to commemorate the 5 years of our government by showing that progress is possible.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at @TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. On Saturday in Palestine, more than 100 people were killed in an Israeli attack on a building in the Jabalia refugee camp in the northern Gaza Strip. According to local media reports, upon the expiration of the humanitarian truce agreed a week ago with the joint mediation of Qatar, Egypt, and the United States, the Israeli troops resumed their attacks on the Gaza Strip, alleged firing by the militias of the Hamas Palestinian movements. In this regard, the occupation forces attacked a house in which families and displaced people were sheltering in the Jabalia camp. The Israeli attacks against the people of Gaza that began on October 7th have claimed the lives of more than 16,000 Palestinians, according to the latest official figures. The recent Israeli attacks in Gaza have been relentless, with strikes coming from air, land, and sea. The targets have primarily been residential buildings, resulting in widespread destruction and loss of life. In this report, our correspondent Nur Harsin will delve into the details of these attacks and their impact on the people of Gaza.
The Israeli operation in Gaza continues, and actually it was one intensive overnight and also early hours of this morning. Crazily, the Israeli forces are attacking Gaza from everywhere, east, west, south, and north, from air, land, and sea. Intensive Israeli shelling, bombings, striking the Gaza Strip in northern Gaza, and specifically in Jabalia refugee camp. The Israeli warplanes hit the blocks of residential blocks in Jabalia refugee camp with tens of air raids, and at the same time the tanks were shelling at the homes. So there is reports that talked about huge fire that were set inside the Palestinian residential homes there because of the heavy airstrikes. Meanwhile, here in middle and southern Gaza it is no different story. Actually, this area that the IDF talked about at the beginning of this war as saying that it is a safe area for Palestinians. Palestinians can evacuate from northern Gaza to southern Gaza. Actually, most of the Israeli attacks overnight were in southern Gaza on the Palestinian city of Khan Yunis. The Israeli forces performed what we call a fire belt, and this is a phrase that we use to explain a series of Israeli strikes that targets the same street or the same neighborhood. We're talking about hundreds of people that were killed. We're talking about hundreds that were injured during the last 24 hours. We can actually describe this day as even worse than the days before the humanitarian truce with Israel. Nur Harazin, teleSUR, Gaza.
Spokesman for the United Nations, Stefan Dujarric, said that the world body regretted the resumption of Israeli hostilities in Gaza.
The Secretary General said he regretted the resumption of hostilities in Gaza and Israel. He urges all concerned parties to swiftly find a way to resume the pause in the fighting and facilitate the release of more hostages. We appeal to the parties not to resort to further military action that can only make the already catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza worse and to spare civilians from more suffering.
Dozens of pro-Palestinian protesters prayed outside the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. to call for a ceasefire in Gaza as Israel and Hamas resumed fighting after a 7-day truce expired.
I think that the pause was humanitarian at all. It should be a permanent ceasefire. It doesn't make sense to bomb all these people, kill all these people, and then just be like, it's okay, we'll pause, and then immediately go back to killing people.
So that's the first thing I saw when I woke up this morning. It was like 3 hours into the end of the ceasefire, and they're blowing up residential neighborhoods, they're killing kids again. And that's the thing, like, it's not a war when you're just blowing up aimlessly. So, I mean, it sucks, and I mean, that's why we're here, because we want a ceasefire, we want it to end, and I mean, more so than anything else, it's just the propaganda that the people in the U.S. see about like being pro-Palestinian, tying us with like Hamas and stuff. It's like, yo, I grew up here. I don't know what Hamas is, but like everyone just wants peace.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the South. On Saturday, the third day of the Dubai COP28 Climate Summit took place in the United Arab Emirates. Delegations participating in a working meeting focused on how to reduce CO2 emissions. In the framework of the COP28 third day, the leaders of the G77 plus China met under the presidency of the Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel, and with the objective of giving space for reflection and coordination of positions among the countries of the Global South in the face of the climate negotiations. For his part, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, as part of his efforts to eliminate coal and gas, affirmed that a burning planet cannot be saved with a fossil fuel fire hose. This COP28 summit is a stage where the negotiators will continue to forge agreements to decide how to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees by the end of the century, as well as achieve a just transition to new energy sources. During the third day of the Dubai Climate Summit, Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley assured that policies must be adopted to help mitigate global temperature increases in order to avoid the loss of human lives.
In the age of superlatives, and in the age of superlatives, we've seen this year 1/3 of the days of the year exceed 1.5 degrees. In Glasgow, I said this was a death sentence. It is a death sentence for many, and the reality is that unless we change course and adopt the policies that can in fact help mitigate that increase in temperatures, we are going to see far more lives lost and far more damage done.
Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley also said the world needs a global agreement to regulate methane gas emissions.
The global methane agreement that the world needs to see has not yet come. And while we are seeing countries move towards greater regulation, we need to be able to have concrete action with respect to the controlling of methane, largely because its damage in the near term is far greater than even CO2. Where is it going to be found for the progress to be made? And to avoid the tipping point, we need oil and gas companies to agree to fix the leaks in their pipelines and to ensure that they also stop the flaring. The bottom line is that there have been voluntary commitments, but that has not gotten us very far. We need strong regulation and compliance to ensure that we can minimize the extent to which that continues to lead and hurl the world into.
For his part, the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Gaston Brown, denounced that the big oil companies and rich nations continue to reap profits while the survival of other nations is at stake.
We are facing an existential paradox. The smallest contributors to global CO2 emissions, yet among the hardest hit by climate catastrophes. This is not just an environmental crisis. It is a glaring testament to a world where profits are prioritized over people and planet. It is a world where oil and gas conglomerates, shielded by the power of wealthy nations, continue to reap astronomical profits, while the survival of nations like ours hangs in the balance. The irony is as bitter as it is unjust.
Madagascar's Constitutional Court announced the final results of the presidential elections, backing the victory of incumbent President Andry Rajoelina. The European Union and United States on Friday led international calls for Andry Rajoelina to ease political tensions in Madagascar after his presidential election win was confirmed by a top court. The Constitutional Court rejected opposition complaints of fraud and said Rajoelina secured 59% of the vote in the November 16 vote. The 49-year-old former party organizer is now clear to start a second straight term without the need for a runoff.
It is the people's choice at the ballot box. Today, the majority of the Malagasy people have expressed themselves through the presidential elections. The Malagasy people have chosen their president. And so today, I would like to thank the Malagasy people for their wisdom, as I have always said.
La sagesse, comme je l'avais toujours dit, du peuple malgache.
At the request of Sudanese authorities, the UN Security Council on Friday ended the World Body's Political Mission in the African country ravaged by more than 7 months of fighting between rival generals. Following a letter from Khartoum demanding an immediate end to the United Nations Integrated Transition Assistance Mission in Sudan, the Security Council adopted a resolution terminating its mandate as of Sunday. Starting Monday, a 3-month transition period would begin to allow for the departure of UNITAM's personnel and the transfer of its tasks to other UN agencies where appropriate and to extent feasible. We have come to the end of this news brief, but before saying goodbye, we want to thank our Caribbean audience, especially the audience of Trinidad and Tobago. We are pleased to share our newscast and contribute to provide an alternative news source of the latest world events. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.